Have you ever been to the mountains? Have you experienced the joy of touching snow? Well, have you just done that and drunk your hot chocolate and clicked your cute little pictures? Or have you ever been there beyond the cameras on a truly daring, amazing, dauntless adventure? Well, that's exactly what our guest for tonight, Dr. Niall McCann, has talked about in this amazing episode from The Unfiltered Show with your host, Barminder Kaur.
I knew that I was going to crash. The issue was I was going 50 miles an hour into a gully and started to tumble. And I got there and they said, listen, Dr. McCann, you have to be prepared that you'll never be able to walk again or do anything from the waist down. And I can't feel as well. My balance isn't quite as... all of the issues that people suffer with spinal cord injuries, toileting and looking at, don't have names. Someone had probably climbed it before, but no one had bothered to name for about 22 hours, so we were very, very tired. And the last head, and hope for the best. But I didn't expect that to
As low as minus 25, and especially at night when
confidently through a landscape like that. It does feel fabulous. So when you're forced into an austere environment, when you're trying to think about him a lot, and that was really nice. Such good footage there. And then they couldn't help us in any way. So they couldn't pass me a glass of water when things got difficult, but we wouldn't let them. The rule, a nice split. The two, but one that basically pushes herself, and I want to try and fill her life first time, so he was the first human on top of them. Two, I want to do in life. My top 20 ambitions. And number one, the one that he first went up, but we want to do it by new.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to yet another episode of The Unfiltered Show. This is your host, always in style, Barminder Kaur. And I'm personally a huge music fanatic. It's always said that there's music on earth for the people who can hear it. I think there's perhaps no better place to listen to this music than the top of a mountain peak. But now, just imagine yourself in the boots of someone who is suffering from a severe spinal cord injury. And you've decided to climb Europe's largest ice cap. We're talking minus 25 degrees Celsius and even lower. And you're doing it while you are not fully able. So you decide to take two of your best mates along with you. But they're actually less able than you are. And you are not doing this in a month or a matter of 2 weeks. You're doing it in just 11 days. It seems like a fantasy, too good to be true. But our hero for tonight has actually beaten all of these challenges and done it. Welcome our hero, Dr. Niall McCann, on The Unfiltered Show tonight.
Thank you, Barminder. You make it sound like a terrible idea when you pitch it. What were we thinking? What were we thinking?
Right. I mean, whatever you were thinking was exactly bold enough to make history, Niall sir. And for the information of our viewers, Niall sir is also the hero of a movie called Alpha, which we're going to be talking about. It's in the spotlight for tonight. And the movie begins with Niall sir talking about his injury. Now, you're probably wondering, a spinal cord injury? Is it that severe? Well, as much as I understand, Niall sir, how hard it must be for you to talk about this time and again, just for one last time, can you please tell us your injury story, how it happened, and the kind of struggles on our show tonight?
Sure, by all means. Thank you for having me on. It's very, very nice feeling. I'm very honoured to be here. So a few years ago, after having a thoroughly enjoyable career doing lots of different adventures, mainly long, hard and cold ones, my brother came up with an idea of doing the types of adventures that aren't so long and aren't so hard and aren't so cold. And the thing that he put in front of me that was most exciting of all was something called speed flying. It's a derivative of paragliding, but it's on a much, much smaller parachute. And you run or you ski off a mountain and you plummet down it, Buzz Lightyear style. You're falling with style. Incredibly enjoyable. So you could be flying, in my case, about 40 miles an hour in a straight line distance, 50 miles an hour on a faster wing, shooting downhill. And then when you get to the ground again, you sprint or you ski to a stop. It's intensely enjoyable, and I did this for about 2 years and loved it. Did it over in Greenland, did it in the Alps, here in the UK a lot. And my issue was that I was trying to fly above my skill level. I wasn't very good at doing this thing, this speed flying, but I imagined I was good. And one day, it was the 6th of May, 2016, I was trying to fly off the highest mountain in South Wales, very close to where I live. And I was trying to fly next to the cliff face. So as I ran off, I tried to pull a turn. So I stayed right next to the cliff face, and then another turn to stay close, another turn to stay close. But on that third turn, I turned a little bit too far. And I found myself facing the mountain and knew that there was nothing I could do to pull out of it. I knew that I was going to crash. The issue was I was going 50 miles an hour, and I was not yet halfway down an incredibly steep mountainside. And so as I was about to impact the mountain, I knew that this was how I die. There's no way that I'm going to be able to survive this situation. And I had two thoughts go through my mind. First one was, this is how I die. And the second was, and that's a shame. And it was just fascinating how they were two separate thoughts, very distinct. And then I did impact the mountain, and I bounced back, and I fell 9 meters, so 30 feet down into a gully, and started to tumble. And I got very lucky that my parachute got snagged on some sharp rocks in there. And so I came to a stop. And over the next little while, it became clear that I was really quite hurt. And my brother climbed down to me, and I told him, I think I can walk out of here. And he said, no, I don't think you can. And it turns out my legs weren't working. We got flown into hospital, straight into the resus department. They took a load of x-rays, then a load of CT scans. And then they came out to tell me what was wrong with me. And the thing that stood out was when they said, listen, Dr. McCann, you have to be prepared that you might never walk again. And that's a shocking thing to hear. Now, your spinal cord links your brain with the rest of your body. So all of the information from your brain travels around the rest of your body via your spinal cord. And mine was damaged basically at the level of your belly button, more or less there. So my brain was no longer able to communicate with anything beneath my belly button. And likewise, the bits beneath my belly button couldn't communicate back up to my brain. And the worry was that damage was going to be permanent, and that I'd never be able to walk again or do anything from the waist down. And it was probably about 4 days later that I was first able to lift my leg again, and then another leg. I was like, okay, well, that's a good sign. And then it was 19 days till I finally stood up, but that was incredibly difficult. And yeah, it took so much effort that I sat back down and fell asleep straight away. And then 38 days till I was released from hospital. I really wasn't very well, wasn't able to move very well. 17 weeks till I climbed back up to the top of the mountain that I had my accident on. 1 year till I joined the mountain rescue team that had rescued me, and then so on and so forth. Started rock climbing again, started mountain biking again, started running again. All of these things slowly starting to build back up into my life. But with the complication that my spinal cord is still damaged. So it's not severed, but it is damaged, bruised, which means I have an incomplete spinal cord injury. So I get a little bit of information from my brain to the bits below my waist, and a little bit of information back up to my brain again, but not as much as I used to. So my muscles are badly withered, especially on the backs of my legs, and I can't feel as well. My balance isn't quite as good as it used to be, but it's getting better. And yeah, there's a sequence of complications, a whole series of complications that people with a spinal cord injury live with, and you just have to adapt to your new life. But most importantly, I'm alive, I can talk, and and so I'm still here, be able to talk about it and smile about it 9 years later.
That is the most inspirational, not bookish kind of inspirational, but a real life inspirational story that I've ever heard. And I also want to talk about something here. So, anytime that I've seen somebody around fall ill, it is often told that when you seem to face a health problem, so that could be some sort of an injury, or a dire sickness, you're often told that you tend to forget about everything else in life, all of those goals you thought you weren't achieving, because then you realize that health really is the utmost gift and that's what you need to preserve. So I'm curious, Niall sir, what exactly changed in the way you struggled and celebrated life, and how did celebrations look to you after the injury? Were there a lot of changes in your day-to-day life as well?
Yeah, really interesting question. When you have something very serious happen to you, everything else becomes easy because you're only focusing on that one thing. Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I think it's known as. And when you are really that unwell, you can just shelve everything else. So it happened to be at the time I was setting up a charity and I was trying to do all of these other things. And you just park those for a while and focus on getting well. The other thing that I really focused on was the relationships that mattered most to me at that time. So my wife, who I'd been married to for a year, my mum, my brothers, others really close to me, really focused on those relationships because that was what helped get me through it. And then once I was out of hospital, the big day-to-day changes are all of the issues that people suffer with spinal cord injuries, so toileting and all of those types of things are just complicated. But for me, it became really important to have goals, set myself goals that I could try and achieve. And a lot of those were career-based, but also physically. I wanted to get back up the mountain where I had my accident. I wanted to try cycling again, then mountain biking, then running, then skiing, then slacklining. I wanted to do all of these things again and had them all as little goals and celebrated every single one of them as wins because they were wins. And I guess I take more pleasure in the simple things than I used to. And yeah, when you've been quite that close to death, and I've had a couple of near-death experiences, it really does make you appreciate life just that little bit more.
Yes. And speaking of near-death experiences, this is something that I've sort of acquired into myself from social media. I know a lot of people have. It's often talked about the kind of accidents that occur in the mountains, and
Mm.
we only go there for our Instagrammable pictures. I'm going to be wearing a cute winter fit. I'll be sipping hot chocolate in the mountains. But you are somebody who's been into the real world and not just the real world. So, can you tell us a little bit about those frightening near death experiences? And the second part of this question I'd like to ask you is, have you ever seen a sort of accident or something terrible like perhaps an avalanche happen right in front of your eyes? And if, God forbid, it actually happens, how are you supposed to take care of it?
Yeah, sometimes you just have to accept that things are out of your control. And I was in Greenland a few years ago
Right.
with my brother, and we had just got to the summit ridge of a mountain. It was a mountain which doesn't have a name. It was one of those amazing parts of the world where loads of the features you're looking at don't have names. And someone had probably climbed it before, but no one had bothered to name it. And we got to the summit ridge. And as we were just stepping on the summit ridge towards the summit itself, stepping very near this big drop, must have been about a 2,000 meter drop off to our side, I just heard an explosion. And it was the sound of an avalanche starting right next to my feet, and just all of this snow and ice and rock just disappeared 2,000 meters down to my side. Just absolutely terrifying, because there is nothing we could have done if we'd been on the bit of rock or snow or ice that had gone, but we were just next to it, like literally half a meter away from it where it went. And that was one of the most terrifying sounds I've ever experienced. But the other near-death experience I had, and properly near-death experience where I thought there's no way I can come out of this situation alive, was in the mountains. It was in the Alps in France, and we had just climbed the north face of a mountain called the Aiguille Verte, which is quite a famous mountain, the Green Mountain, and it's just over 4,000 meters high. And then we were climbing down on the south side, and by this point it was about midnight, so it was pitch black. We'd been going for about 22 hours, so we were very, very tired. And the last bit of the steep part of the mountain required us to abseil. So I was abseiling down this cliff face, and at the bottom of the rope, because I was partially delirious, because I was so tired and I wasn't paying close enough attention, I abseiled off the end of the rope. So instead of getting myself secure and safely taking the rope out, I just disappeared off the end of the rope, and I ended up falling 300 meters, which is a crazy, crazy distance to fall. And I was tumbling for most of that way, mainly from my head to my feet, tomahawking, and then rolling on my side as well. And then I launched over a thing called a Berghaus, which is where a glacier meets the mountain. And this was 10 meters high, and then about similar gap. And I launched over that and then landed on the other side and kept on tumbling head to head and then side to side. And the whole way I went down, I was just expecting bits of me to come flying off at any point because I was falling off a mountain. And I remember thinking very precisely, brace and accept the landing that's coming to you. There's nothing I could do about it. I just had to basically relax and just have my hands above my head to try and protect my head and hope for the best. But I didn't expect that to go well. And I was very, very surprised when I slowly slid to a stop.
Wow. I think if somebody wants to learn the art of letting go of literally everything, then I wouldn't go to a monk or a saint. I'd come to Dr. Nile. And speaking of darkness and snow so much, how does it feel? That's all I can think of because in the movies and in the pictures, we see all of these romanticized versions of the mountains. And I agree, we do romanticize it to an extent. I personally have been on just a trek or two to the world's longest and highest, Lord Shiva temple. And there were so many things going on. There was so much snow, and it was barely 2 or 3 degrees, and yet I felt the chills in every single part of my body. So, how does it feel to be in temperatures as low as -25, and especially at night when at the ground you are covered in white, pearly snow, but then it's getting darker and darker and darker?
Yeah, it can be quite intimidating, but it can also feel immensely exhilarating, especially when you know that you're well prepared, that you have the right gear and the right training, and you have a good plan. In that case, you can feel really in control. And it's wonderful to be in control of an environment that is as hostile as that environment is, because that's an objectively hostile environment, that level of cold, that level of objective danger. So if you can take that into your control, then it's an immensely empowering feeling. When it gets out of control, that's where it gets really worrying, because things can go from being perfectly fine to really, really not fine very, very quickly. So you're trying to mitigate all of those potential issues as much as possible through good preparation. But there's no environment that I feel more alive, more inspired than a mountainous environment. And some part of that must be that sense of objective danger that you can control. And it's just, it's a wonderful thing, moving safely and confidently through a landscape like that. It does feel fabulous.
And if we get out of this metaverse a little bit, where we're talking social media apps, some of us are actually genuinely curious about what goes on in that life in the mountains. In fact, there's this very famous meme from a movie that talks about the life beyond the mountains. So we only look at them from afar, but there's actually a sort of valley and a different world beyond them. It's often described in poems that way. So what does it feel like in the life beyond the mountains? What kind of things do you eat? What kind of thoughts do they occur to you? And how is it, the slow living? Is it peaceful?
It's so rare these days to be able to put your phone down and not be connected. So it's a lovely thing when that does happen. I journal. I keep diaries when I go away to these places. So a lot of my thoughts are focused on journaling, which is lovely. But sometimes the nicest thing is just to sit by a little mountain stream and listen to it bubble, listen to it as it goes past you. And we never take the time to do that in our normal lives. So when you're forced into an austere environment, when you're removed from the day-to-day connectivity that we have, it does feel wonderfully refreshing. Suddenly it feels like you have time to do these things again, because we feel so rushed all the time. And yet if you're on an expedition in the mountains, you things just do take a long time, and you should let them take time. And it's a lovely thing for the body to move at a slower pace every now and then. We're so attuned to moving fast, so quick, quick, quick. And it's wonderful to slow down and just absorb things. So, yeah, focus on making your breakfast, and to do that, you melt snow and you melt ice. You boil that up and you put it into some dehydrated food. And like something as simple as that, collecting snow just to make your breakfast every day, it becomes a lovely routine, a lovely ritual about it. But taking the time to spot wildlife in the mountains or look at a mountain peak from a different aspect and appreciate it from a different aspect, taking the time to think and reflect is really nice. A trip I did a few years ago with my brother was pretty shortly after our dad had died, and both of us took the time to think about him a lot, and that was really nice. And having that space and that time without other distractions gave us the opportunity to reflect on the amazing life that he had and the amazing relationship that we had with him. And it's nice to have that forced upon you every now and then, because otherwise we make excuses and we always find other things to do.
Right. And I think after hearing the kind of magnificent way and the sublime way in which you talked about just something as simple as food, I definitely respect what I see on my plate every now and then a lot more. And in contrast to this slow living that we've talked about, let's go back to alpha, to the extreme side of it.
Mm-hmm.
So, first things first is, throughout the trailer, we see a lot of these bird's eye view shots where all you can see is three men with an enormous amount of weight going up Patnajuku, which is Europe's largest ice cap, and there's no human inhabitation inside, as far as the eye can see. So I'm really curious, Dr. Niall, how were these kind of shots taken and what was going on with the camera crew who were there to support you throughout?
Yes, this put us in a bit of a quandary. So I came up with the idea of the expedition about 2 years before we did it. And I wrote to Darren and to Ed, my two companions, and I said, how do you fancy skiing across Vatnajökull in April 2023? And they were both really keen for it. And we talked about it more, and we realized there's an opportunity to do something more than just ski across the ice cap here. We could do something public, talk about what we're doing, talk about disability in the outdoors, talk about men being vulnerable and asking each other for help, all these things that don't really get talked about very often. We saw an opportunity to do that. But to do that really well, we kind of needed to have the exposition recorded really well. And we could shoot it on our iPhones, but you're only going to get such good footage there. And then we got the exposition sponsored by Berghaus, the outdoor brand. And of course, they want to get something for their sponsorship. And what they want is a really high quality film. So their idea of having a high quality film matched perfectly with our idea of wanting to have great content that we could share to try and encourage other people to go out, push themselves beyond their comfort zone, to see life beyond disability, to reach out to your friends and ask for help. It all aligned. But the thing that was weighing on our minds was that we didn't want to compromise the core of the expedition, which was 3 guys with disabilities doing an amazing trip without help. So we just set an incredibly strict rule that we stuck to, that the camera crew could be our shadows, but nothing else. They couldn't help us in any way. So they couldn't pass me a glass of water. They could never lift anything. They could never ski in front of us, because that would be breaking trail or showing us the way. They could never even give us any advice. So if they saw that, for example, Ed dropped his ice axe at one point, they weren't able to tell him. They picked it up and they kept it, but Ed wasn't allowed it for the rest of the trip. And Darren dropped his sunglasses. Again, he's never seen them again. One of the guys that lives in Iceland has them, but Darren's not seeing those again. So we could receive zero advice, zero help from them at all. So it was still a pure expedition, unsupported, but we still had this amazing documentary film crew led by Matt Pycroft, who runs Cold House Collective, and they made a wonderful job of being our shadows. But it was hard for them, because at various points they would have wanted to intervene when things got difficult, but we wouldn't let them. The rule we had was that unless there was an immediate threat to life, they couldn't intervene. So if Darren fell into a crevasse, they couldn't help. Ed and I would have to get him out. But if Darren fell into a crevasse and his ice axe got stuck in his head, then they could help because he would be about to die unless they did. So that was the rule that we set, and we stuck to it.
Wow. That is legendary, and I'd like to express my gratitude to the team, the director, and everybody who helped with it because this is something historical. Even though I've just seen the trailer, I already know that the movie is going to be amazing. And since our show is called The Unfiltered Show, and we've talked about the real, true side of things, I now want to come to what I like to call the unfiltered segment. So we get very raw, very authentic here. First thing is, I think you're definitely a man of mountains because you've received so many second chances. I think this is really what you were meant to do. And since you've climbed so many summits, so many pinnacles, if all of these mountains, Dr. Nile, were given a voice that they could say whatever they wanted to say about you because they've seen the most unfiltered sides of who you are, what would they say about Dr. Niall McCann?
Never even thought about that. What an interesting question. Goodness. Well, I'd hope they'd say keep going. That what I'm doing is the right thing because I've dedicated my life to trying to make the world a better place and protect the planet with my career. And I've dedicated my life to trying to experience the world in its most beautiful sense with my extracurricular activities. And I think that's been a nice split. The two lives that I live as Dr. Niall McCann, the biologist, the conservationist, and then Niall McCann, the adventurer. So I hope those mountains would say, keep it up and don't stop. Yeah, because I don't want to stop. I love gathering experiences, especially with other people. But I love trying to also have an impact while I'm at it, because just doing those experiences for experience's sake is to be celebrated. But I also want to have an impact at the same time. And I'm not sure why I'm so obsessed with this, because some friends and some family are less obsessed with it. I'm deeply conscious of legacy. And yeah, so I hope those mountains would say, keep on going. And I will keep on going.
Kudos to you, Dr. Nile. I think there's this song by Michael Jackson that goes, Heal the world, make it a better place. Of course, legendary song. And I think there could not have been a more better explanation of those words envisioned into a real life person, better than what you've just said right now. And since we're talking about keeping it going, moving forward, this obsession, not just to materialistic success, not to that at all, but to healing the world, to showing people that you are doing things so that they can. And this is not the end of Alpha indeed. Alpha is the beginning, it is the present, it is the future. So, what's next?
My biggest focus, as you know, Barminder, is creating an amazing life for my daughter Phoebe and having as many adventures and experiences as I can for her, and yeah, creating a wonderful, warm and loving environment, but one where she pushes herself, and I want to try and fill her life full of experiences and then to share them with her as well. So that's my biggest focus. But I also have individual aspirations as well, and along the theme of Alpha, those relate to mountains and mountainous environments. And partially that's because I just love those places and I feel more inspired and more uplifted by mountainous environments than by anywhere else. And partially it's because I have a family history that is deeply entwined with mountain environments. And most pertinently of all, in a place called Baffin Island in the Canadian Arctic. There's an island, Baffin, and it's in northeastern Canada. And much of the early geographical research and mountaineering that was done on that island was done by my grandfather, by my mum's dad, who was called Colonel Patrick Baird. And he first went there in the mid 1930s. His best friend died there, and then he went back many, many times thereafter. He went there with my mum when she was only 14 years old. She spent 6 weeks on Baffin Island as camp cook for one of his expeditions. He summited some of the most iconic mountains of that region for the first time. So he was the first human on top of them. Two in particular, Mount Loki, which is called the Matterhorn of Baffin, and Mount Odin, which is the highest mountain on Baffin. But notably, he didn't summit the most famous mountain in that region of all, which is called Mount Asgard. It's an incredible looking thing. It's named after the Norse god. It's worth looking up. It's got these twin peaks. It's just utterly spectacular. And despite returning to that area many, many times and leading the first expedition that summited it, he never summited it himself. A few years ago, I was asked, what do I most list the top 20 things I most want to do in life? My top 20 ambitions. And number one was to climb Mount Asgard. Wow. And so finally, life has aligned. And my brother Finn and I are going to go to Baffin Island this summer in July, and we are going to climb Mount Asgard, this mountain that eluded our grandfather all that time. And then if we get the weather, if we have enough good weather in the 4-week window that we are going to have, just ourselves, no internet, no one else for 70 miles, just us in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by beautiful mountains. If we get the weather, we also want to climb Mount Loki, the one that he first went up, but we want to do it by a new route that no one's ever done before, and to name it after him. And then to climb Mount Odin, the highest mountain on Baffin, by the route that he did for the first time back in 1953. And that would be, that'll be one hell of a thing. When we come home from that in August this year, 2025, I think that will feel as though we've finished a chapter in our family life in some way. And although I'm sure I'll have other big expeditions that I do independently and with my brother, I think after that, my main focus will be Phoebe. This feels like such an enormous thing for me and for our family. And it feels like the culmination of 43 years of life. And then when that is done, and when we've had this amazing 4 weeks, just the two of us in that incredible environment, I think it's going to be, full steam ahead, just making sure that Phoebe has the best life possible.
I had to take a second there to absorb all of that in. For our viewers and listeners, Phoebe is Dr. Niall McCann's beautiful daughter, and she's no ordinary person. This is somebody who knows how to lift. She can cycle across forests. She accompanies her daddy on so many adventures. She's climbed more peaks than I think I might be able to in my life. And she can do pull-ups. She is amazing. Yeah. And I think Dr. Niall McCann is leading 3 lives: adventurer, biologist, and not just a father, but in fact a dad. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight, Dr. Niall. It has been an absolute honor to host you. I think this has been one of the most enlightening conversations, not just I've had, but that our viewers have had with someone. And with the kind of way we talked about things, I'm sure everybody felt very involved. I'm very much grateful to you, to our whole entire The Pop Movement team who have been producing this episode. Thank you so much for helping us with this. Thank you to everybody at the back end, the editorial team, and all of our viewers, of course, for always making our episodes a success. Are there any closing remarks you'd like to add here, Dr. Niall?
Well, firstly, just to thank you for having me, and then secondly, for asking such probing questions that I haven't been asked before. I get interviewed a lot, so I'm used to the normal questions. Right. And you've asked me a bunch of questions that I've never even thought about today, which was really interesting. And so for me, I've thoroughly enjoyed this, because it's made me think about things in a way that I'm not used to doing, which is really nice to do that. And thank you to the Pop Movement and everyone else for having me. And please feel free to reach out anytime via my website or via Instagram. I will respond, and keep on making the world a better place.
Right. And especially a thank you to mentor and senior mentor, co-founder, the pop movement, Dr. Ash Pachauri. I think he's definitely the man who pushed me to do this. And I'm so filled with mirth to be hearing that, Dr. Nile. I think young people like us can change the world, and I think that's just the beauty of youth. With that being said, this is your host, Barminder Kaur, wrapping up with Dr. Niall McCann on The Unfiltered Show. Thank you.
Thank you.